Centralia, Pennsylvania. Once a small, quiet town filled with families, children, and miners, it now stands almost completely abandoned, buried under smoke, ash, and the memory of a disaster that no one could have imagined. The story of Centralia is not just about a town destroyed by fire, but about human mistakes, hidden dangers beneath our feet, and the way a single event can erase an entire community from the map. To understand how Centralia was lost, we have to go back in time, to the early days of its existence. Founded in the 19th century, Centralia was a typical coal town in Pennsylvania's anthracite coal region. Coal was the lifeblood of the town. Almost everyone's livelihood depended on the mines, and the people of Centralia built their homes, schools, and churches around this industry. At its peak, the town had about 2,000 residents. It had grocery stores, saloons, and movie theaters. It was a small but thriving community where people knew their neighbors and life revolved around the rhythms of mining. But beneath the surface of Centralia lay an unseen danger. The coal that gave life to the town was also a volatile force. Underground, veins of anthracite stretched for miles, and once ignited, this kind of coal could burn not for days, but for decades, even centuries. In 1962, as Memorial Day approached, the town council decided to clean up the local landfill. It wasn't unusual in those days to deal with garbage by simply setting it on fire. So, a group of firefighters ignited the dump, intending to reduce the trash to ashes. They thought it was routine. But what they didn't realize was that the fire had reached an opening that connected directly to the old coal mines below the town. Once the flames slipped into the underground tunnels, they found fuel that seemed endless. The fire spread silently at first, moving slowly through abandoned shafts deep below the ground. No one in Centralia knew what had just been unleashed. Over the next months and years, the underground fire grew. It spread into other tunnels, releasing smoke, carbon monoxide, and toxic gases. The ground in some areas began to heat up. Cracks appeared in the streets, and steam hissed from the earth. Residents began to notice strange signs. Gardens wouldn't grow. The air sometimes smelled of sulfur. Snow melted strangely fast in winter, as if the ground itself was giving off heat. People reported headaches and nausea from the fumes. But for many, life continued. At first, officials tried to put out the fire. They poured water, clay, and even wet sand into the tunnels, hoping to smother the flames. They dug trenches and sealed openings. But the fire was too deep, too widespread. Every attempt failed, and each failure cost money that small-town governments didn't have. Over the years, the problem worsened. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Centralia began to draw national attention. Scientists and government agencies studied the situation. They warned that the fire could burn for centuries and that living in Centralia was dangerous. But many residents resisted leaving. Centralia was their home, the place where their parents and grandparents had lived. To them, the fire was a nuisance, not a death sentence. That changed in 1981 when a frightening event made headlines. A young boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his backyard when the ground suddenly opened beneath him. A sinkhole, more than 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep, had appeared without warning. Todd clung to a tree root and barely escaped being swallowed. When rescuers pulled him out, they discovered that the pit was releasing toxic gases, a direct result of the underground fire. This near tragedy became a turning point. The government declared Centralia unsafe. Over the next years, most of the town's residents were relocated. Homes were purchased under eminent domain and demolished. Streets that once bustled with children and neighbors fell silent. By the 1990s, Centralia was nearly gone. The post office closed. Zip codes were revoked. Maps stopped marking the town. Today, only a handful of residents remain, stubbornly refusing to leave even as the fire still smolders beneath their feet. Walking through Centralia today feels surreal. Streets lead to nowhere, ending in empty lots where houses once stood. Nature has reclaimed much of the land. Trees grow where homes used to be. Graffiti covers the cracked highway known as Graffiti Highway, a stretch of abandoned road split and warped by the heat below. Smoke still rises in some places, reminding visitors that the fire is alive, even if the town is not. Scientists estimate that the fire could continue to burn for another 200, even 300 years. Centralia is often called America's modern ghost town, a warning of how human mistakes, combined with natural forces, can erase a place from history. But for those who once lived there, Centralia is not just a cautionary tale. It's a memory of a home they lost. Families that had lived there for generations were scattered, their community dissolved by something they couldn't control. Today, Centralia attracts curious travelers, urban explorers, and those fascinated by abandoned places. Some see it as a tragedy, others as a living reminder of how fragile our towns and cities can be. A fire started by accident, meant only to burn garbage, became an unstoppable force. And beneath the quiet hills of Pennsylvania, it still burns, waiting, unseen, a fire with no end. The story of Centralia is not just about a town that disappeared. It's about the thin line between human control and the raw power of nature. It's about how something invisible, deep underground, can destroy the surface above. And it's about the resilience of memory, because even though Centralia is nearly gone, its story continues to burn in the imagination of people around the world.